Good morning and welcome to the DAC Webcast. I'm Jennifer Stafford. I'm the Director in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support. We welcome you today to the June monthly DAC Webcast. It's June 10th, and once again, we are virtual here at our homes, and we welcome you to this webcast. We have a full agenda today. We've got Kevin O'Hare, consultant in our division, who is going to present to you alternate assessment topics and some updates that we have and some future plans. We also have Shara Savage with us this morning and is going to give you some up-to-date information about ACT fall testing, as well as a review process for this summer. We have some additional information to share with you about a new committee, the Standards Assessment Process Review Committee, that is going to meet fairly soon, as well as some guidance that will hopefully help you as your district returns to school and is making some very important decisions. So with that, I'll ask Helen if she would bring up the PowerPoint presentation for us. And we can then look at the agenda. Thank you, Helen. And again, we welcome you today, and we are going to discuss the updates of alternate assessment, ACT testing, that new committee, and then the document of guidance called Evaluating Students document. And then finally, we will take your questions. Pam Powers, as always, is monitoring the DAC Info webcast. So if you do have questions throughout the presentation, we will take questions at the end and provide any answers that we have at this time. You can email dacinfo@education.ky.gov with your questions, and we'll respond to them again in the end. I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Kevin O'Hare for his alternate assessment update.
All right. Well, thanks, Jennifer, and welcome everyone. It's great to be a part of today's meeting and to be able to just share some important information that we have coming up with the alternate assessment. As we go through, I'll be asking Helen to just move through the slides for me, and as we share the information out. So Helen, we'll go ahead and get started if you want to move to slide 4 here. So the first thing we want to talk about is the changes that we will be looking at beginning this fall, or changes for 2020, 2021, and beyond that. But these will take effect this next school year. And so, there has been conversation for some time about the alternate assessment accountability folder, the AAAF, and the significance of it, and a little bit of background around it is we intended on, when we first came out with the AAAF, I want to say back in 2011, that was when we moved away from portfolio style assessments in the alternate assessment. And so we needed a way to monitor the type of testing that was occurring in districts, and we never shipped the attainment task back. We always asked districts to destroy those. And so the AAAF became our monitoring tool, if you will, in districts. And we just, at the end of the school year, requested a percentage to be submitted back to the state. And, for a while, it served its purpose well. We were able to give some comments back and rate the work that was done. But over time, it's kind of lost its purpose, and not mean that in a bad way, not meaning anybody has done anything wrong or anything like that. It's just it's lost the initial intent. And our most recent peer review, one of the feedbacks that we got back was that they did not feel that was the most effective way to monitor, I think was how they put it. And so back in the end of January, we sent out a survey and shared out some information with teachers and administrators across the state. And our teachers kind of give us the same implications that we're doing a form of this through our working folders. And so this is requiring teachers of students on the alternate assessment to do additional work. And So we took all of those comments and things of that nature into consideration and came to a conclusion that beginning in the 2020-21 school year and beyond, we will no longer, as a state, require the alternate assessment accountability folder. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going away completely. What that means is districts will still have the option, if they choose to ask their teachers to complete some of that information. The actual components of the AAAF, like the student information page that's out there on their website, that actually is a combination along with the career ready AAAF components. So it will not go away. That document won't, and we will still have a document out there as a resource if a district chooses to continue to monitor the AAAF. But what that means is, as a state, we will no longer ask schools and teachers to complete the AAAF for a state requirement. The next change that we're going to look at is the administration of the social studies at high school. And in the past, we have administered social studies at grade 12, and that was just because of the intent of reducing the amount of the workload for teachers and students. And the conversation was had that not everyone felt that it would be too much to administer at grade 11. And so that also was a survey question that we sent out back in January. And we honestly, the feedback we got was within, I want to say it was 3 or 4 difference in providing at grade 11 or grade 12. So they were pretty equal on the specifics around that. And so here at the department, we did make the decision to move social studies to grade 11 this coming year. And what that'll mean is that it will be an additional assessment at grade 11 for our alternate students. So they will be completing writing, science, and the transition attainment record along with now social studies. However, that also frees up the grade 12 year for students to focus on transition to, what's next. They may stay till grade 14, or they may exit and go into something post-secondary. And so that gives our students the opportunity to focus on transition, to focus on the career readiness components, and hopefully make those next steps towards what they plan to do for the future. All right, next slide, Helen. So just a real quick look at the timeline for the 2020-21 school year. Now, as you're well aware, we have in the past conducted 2 assessment windows, one in the fall and one in the spring for our students. And so basically what we had originally come back with was in August, we would come back into school, we would look at conducting trainings a couple weeks after school year started. And by the 1st of November, we were administering our first round of assessments to our alternate students. Now, with the current situation that we've encountered here as a state, as a nation, and on a worldwide scale, there's been a lot of change that's occurred in our schools to all of our students. And, this has an impact on any student being out of the environment since early March and coming back into we're still wondering what it'll look like, I think, as a whole. And so we made the decision to not bring our students and our teachers back to an environment where they're going to go right back into testing and looking at the information out there. We are providing new alternate assessment targets that are a part of the Kentucky Academic Standards. So that's kind of the design and layout of our test makeup as we move forward. Those were released in May and we'll talk briefly about that in just a few minutes. And then we're coming out with writing and social studies next week. So we're providing some new instructional materials and new information out there for our teachers And we felt like that was going to be a lot. That was going to be a lot to introduce this, to introduce the transition that our students are going to be going back to. And so with that being said, we have opted not to conduct an assessment in November. Basically what that means is we are going to still continue to have 2 windows, but we are going to push those back. So teachers and students can focus on adjusting back to the classroom if they so choose, looking at the new materials, the new content, and then hopefully having the appropriate time to move to that assessment format. So with that being said, we will look at a spring 2021 operational field test. And so there's still going to be 2 windows. We're going to look at providing the first window from mid-February, and it'll run through the end of March. Then there'll be about a 2 to 3 week gap between the second window starting in mid-April and running through the end of May. So we're still on that 6-week time frame that we had prior or with our former assessments, 6-week testing windows for each. It's just going to be pushed back a little bit based upon all the changes that we've encountered. So I mentioned an operational field test. Let me first give you a little bit of background about an operational field test, and our next slides will go more into detail, but based upon the COVID-19 timelines, students enrolled in Kentucky Alternate Assessment, they didn't get a chance to complete a field test this past spring. It wasn't an option. Everything was ready to go. All materials were ready to ship, and then we basically, encountered a very life-altering change across the Commonwealth. And so what we had to look at was the need to still conduct a field test on new items, and how are we going to do that? Well, operational field test is something that's not very familiar with Kentucky. We have conducted on a very small scale in the past. If memory serves me correctly, the last time we changed social studies standards and conducted new assessment items for the alternate, we did what we considered an operational field test, and that's been many moons ago. But across the country, that's not uncommon. Operational field tests are not uncommon, and we've seen effective results by many states across the nation. So, Helen, if you want to move to slide 7. So basically, with an operational field test and how it would apply to the alternate assessment this year, right now we are working on bringing in stakeholders to develop items, to write items. We had a very small scale of items developed for what we would consider the spring 2020 assessment that didn't happen. So we had, like I said, just a few items developed for each content area, but we needed a much broader range to make this an operational assessment or field test. So right now, our vendors, the University of Kentucky, is working on bringing in item writers to develop during the summer and early fall. There will be multiple reviews conducted on these items. They'll focus on alignment, we'll focus on content, we'll focus on bias, as well as additional internal and external edits and revisions that will occur at not just the state level, but the regional level by many of our content folks that have been involved in the work that we've been doing up to this point. So basically what the intent of those operational field test items will be is, for one, we have to have an accountable assessment for the 2020-21 school year. And so in order to tie those items to the accountability, I know sometimes there's questions or concerns about a field test item being part of accountability, but I assure you that these items are not just going to be something that we put together. They are something that's going to go through multiple reviews. So I'm comfortable in the fact that they're going to be very, very developed test items moving forward. They're going to be based upon the Kentucky academic standards that we have, and then aligned with the alternate assessment targets that we have most recently released and that we will release for writing and social studies. All right, slide 8, Helen, please. Okay, so with that being said, now I want to talk about something that we have to discuss. And I've been getting probably more questions about this than I have the new standards and the new targets. But the question that I'm getting from teachers and administrators is, well, what about the TAR? And the TAR is our aligned assessment to the requirements at grade 11 for students taking the ACT. If you're familiar with the TAR any at all, it's a checklist style assessment that's based upon standards for reading, math, and science, based around those same standards that we conduct in our attainment task. So they kind of tie together in the fact that students have encountered the standards through the attainment task, and so that is a good resource or a checkpoint for them to be applied to the TAR, where they have evidence that these students have encountered these content standards. The problem that lies in this is the fact that we have new standards rolling out this year for reading and math at grade 10. So what that means, a situation where our 10th graders this year are going to be seeing these new standards. Our 11th graders taking the TAR have never saw those standards at 10th grade and won't. They won't see new reading and math standards because they are, those are coming in at the 10th grade year. So what we have discussed is that this year, the TAR will be a replication of what we've had last year, the year before. That won't change. It's going to be based around the same standards that our students at grade 11 or grade 12 and 14, if those students are going to be completing the TAR, would take. So this year, the TAR will be based upon former standards, last year's standards. Now, each year, our 10th graders this year that have the new standards are going to encounter new standards on the TAR next year at grade 11. So next year, in 2021, 2022, we are going to have to implement the new standards into the TAR at grade 11. However, those students that have moved into grade 12 or even grade 14 have never saw those new standards once again. So that assessment would still be based upon our former. And then, of course, 2022, 2023 being based upon our 12th graders in 2022, 2023 being this year's 10th graders, they would still have they would have access to those new standards. So at that point in time, after the 2023 school year, we should be moved into those completely new standards. And then last but not least, for the alternate on slide 9 is the just a look at the calendar for the upcoming year, and I can tell you that it looks a little different than what we've looked at in the past. Typically coming into August, we have our combined overview and attainment task training. However, that's been pushed back until November. So the first thing that teachers will have is the TAR will be available to our high school teachers beginning October 5th. The overview training and a combined overview and attainment test training won't be available till November 2nd. It'll run through February 10th. Our first testing window would start February 15th and run through March 26th. And so this information I hope to share out in an alternate assessment email late next week when I roll out the new writing and social studies targets. And then you will also get a clearer look at this, hopefully, in the Monday DAC email. So with that, I will now turn it back over to Jennifer, or who will then, I guess, lead it to Shara. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate your information. Helen, if you would, please go back to slide 7. I'd like to just make a few more comments about the operational field test. On the operational field test, this is something new for Kentucky. We generally have taken the approach that we have a standalone field test, but at this point, we see that it is a need for our alternate assessment program for our students to do a little something different. During the last few months with this COVID situation, we've had the opportunity to research and look into, as Kevin mentioned, what other states have done and are doing. And so we talked with the University of Kentucky. We've talked to our psychometricians as well as other educators here in the state of Kentucky about the opportunity that we have here with our alternate assessment program. So when we've talked about the operational field test, the first question that I'm asked is about, well, how will we do that? How will we give students scores back? Because generally in a standalone field test, students don't get scores, and that's true. The difference between the standalone field test and the operational field test is that the student in an operational field test will take a complete battery of questions and items that will lead to or could lead to a complete score. In a standalone field test, students only take a few items that are not able to produce a complete score for that content area. We reduce the number of items that the student takes, and we spread those field test items over a number of students. With an operational field test, every student would take a complete battery of items so that the student then could get a score for that content area. Additionally, what we would do is have further analysis of those items that are being utilized in that operational field test. Because of the fact that these are newly developed items, then we will have that psychometric analysis on the items during this operational field test. So again, these are new processes. It's a new procedure for us in Kentucky, and just because it's new for us doesn't mean it's not. It is a new process because, again, other states have used it and have had quite success in it. So we think that this is a good option, one that has been researched heavily and really gone into with a lot of consideration and thoughtful decision making as we went through trying to make this decision because it is so important for our alternate assessment students in that program. So again, if you have questions, and I know you may have on this topic, please email dacinfo@education.ky.gov, and Pam is monitoring that email address, and we will address any of your questions at the end. So with that, I'm going to ask Shara to share with us our new details. We have a few more details about ACT testing and want to provide those most up-to-date information. So Shara, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Yes, as Jennifer said, I have some reminders and some updates for the fall state administration of the ACT. Helen, if you'll go to the next slide. Thank you. Here is the fall state testing windows. The initial standard test date is September 22nd. As with a traditional spring test date, there will be a corresponding accommodations testing window, and that window is aligned with the initial test date that runs from September the 22nd through the 25th and September 28th through October the 2nd. And additionally, you'll see there on your screen, there is a makeup test date, which is October the 6th. And it also has an accommodation test window running October the 6th through the 9th and Monday, October the 12th. And just as a reminder, we will not be offering a online testing option. Okay, Helen, go next. Thank you. And just as a reminder, this to ensure that examinees who missed their opportunity to take the state administration of the ACT this past spring due to our school closures and the COVID, Katie, we are offering that fall testing window option. But please do note that this fall administration option is only available to 2019-2020 juniors who did not participate in the spring 2020 testing window. This is not an opportunity for students to retest. And so as the data from the initial test dates are finalized, KDE and ACT are working to identify those students who did not test, and we are going to need DAC, our DACs and our BACs. We're going to need some help to tell us, to help finalize that list. I'm sorry. So if we'll go to the next slide, we will take a look at the review process for the fall administration of the ACT and how our DACs and BACs can help us with that. The review process is tentatively set for July 6th through the 22nd. However, we may start that process a little sooner, but we will give you some details in an upcoming DAC email on that. So in this review process, KDE will upload a district level spreadsheet on the secure web app, and DACs will download the spreadsheet for review of accuracy and verify student eligibility. The spreadsheet will contain all ACT tested students, including students who missed their opportunity to test during the spring administration of the ACT. Once the spreadsheet has been updated, DACs will upload the file, and we will provide details on the exact upload instructions and additional details on the review process in a forthcoming Monday DAC email for you. So be on the lookout for that. Now let's take a look at the fall training schedule. So Helen, thank you. For the fall state administration of the ACT, KDE and ACT will be providing training and guidance. On July 30th at 1 p.m., KDE will be hosting a training on KDE policy, and will be joined by ACT, who will provide test administration updates. And then ACT will be hosting 2 additional trainings on August the 4th at 10 a.m. For the test administration, and on August the 6th at 2 p.m. for accommodations training. We will have registration links for all 3 trainings in a Monday DAC email coming up soon. So that, now I do want to additionally say we do want to invite DACs, BACs, and test coordinators to all 3 trainings. If you are unable to attend, these trainings will be recorded and we will post them, and we will provide information related to those recordings in a Monday DAC email following each training. So be on the lookout for those if you are unable to attend the training. So that is the updates for ACT, and I will hand it back over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Shara. And Helen, if you would, please go to slide 13. And as Helen is going back to slide 13, I will note for you, my son is completely finished with mowing our yard now. So if you did hear the lawn mowing in the background, he is at this point finished with both the riding lawn mower and the push mowing. So apologize for any of that if that was distracting. Do want to note for you here that these are tentative dates for the review of students who are eligible for the fall ACT administration. These are tentative dates, July 6th through 22nd. We've gotten the file from ACT of initial examinees, and we feel like that it is in pretty good shape. So we could possibly begin this review process for district assessment coordinators earlier. As Shara mentioned, these are tentative dates, and we will go out with these earlier. So we're pretty confident that the July 6th through 22nd date will move, but we want to make sure that you have this process and this responsibility on your radar so that you know that there is going to be this back and forth between KDE, OAA, our office, and the district. So we want to ensure that every student has the opportunity to have the state administration of the ACT. Now, if something happens that your school district is not in session during this time frame, then we'll come back to you with additional plans. But we do want to ensure that our students have the opportunity for that statewide administration. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure with that. So thank you, Helen. If you'll move forward then. I think the Standards Assessment Process Review Committee is the next topic. In 2017, our legislative body, the General Assembly, passed Senate Bill 1, 2017, and it had a process for review of standards and the aligned assessments for every 6 years. In that piece of legislation that ended up as KRS 1586453, there is a very detailed outline of process for standards development and then assessments aligned to those new standards. There is multiple committees, and of those committees, there were advisory panels, review committees, and then the final of those committees is the Standards Assessment Process Review Committee. So over the past months, we have, as an office, engaged many educators in the development of the assessment blueprint. Now, the blueprints were released about a month ago, I want to say in a DAC Monday email with draft on those. Those were released in draft because the committees, the AP committees and RC committees, those advisory panels and review committees in reading and math and social studies had met and they had completed their work. What we had not received as of yet was the appointment of the Standards Assessment Process Review Committee. So we went ahead and released those blueprints that were in draft. Since that time, the governor has appointed the members of the SAPRC, and that committee is one of the final steps in finalizing that assessment blueprint. So the review panel, this last committee to meet, is to review whether the process of that blueprint development was sufficient or not. So they're going to look at the process that was used to make sure that it aligns with the statute and to ensure that the department has completed all the steps in accordance with that piece of legislation. So this next committee is appointed. We do have the members. And Helen, if you'll look at the next slide, the members are representative across education, both secondary and post-secondary, and then there are members representing the parents as well as superintendents and others. So the members are appointed, and we are in the process of developing that timeline of when they can meet. Want to say that we're looking at early July for this final meeting for the SAPRC members. So once they meet, and again, their responsibility is to review the process that was used to develop those blueprints, and then make a recommendation to the Kentucky Board of Education as to whether that process was sufficient or not, and all the stakeholders had adequate opportunity to provide input to that blueprint. So after this meeting, then a recommendation will be either made to the Kentucky Board of Education that the process was appropriate or not. So they're not looking at the specific content of the blueprint itself, but they're looking at the process. So just want to make you aware that those final steps are in preparation, and we look forward to having finalized blueprints for you in those content areas of reading, math, and social studies. The next topic is a piece of guidance that we created in this office, and I have to give a shout out to Jenny Larkins for assisting in the development of this piece of guidance. And Helen, if you'll move forward with the slide. The guidance is really to help you think through returning to school. Many decisions have to be made now within the next couple of months on how to return to school in the fall. We wanted to provide you as district assessment coordinators and instructional leaders in your district with some guidance that may help you in thinking about determining the academic level of our students. At this point, we don't know the impact of non-traditional instruction on students' academic levels. And so with this piece of guidance, we're really encouraging you to look at the data and the data that you have at the district level. With the fact that we received a state waiver for both assessments as well as accountability, we're not going to be able to provide you a lot of detailed data on information as it relates to students and their academic performance in multiple content areas. Now, we will have some data that we will release this fall, which includes the K-Screen data, as well as access data, graduation data, and some long-term goals. We'll have a little bit of information and data to share with you, but it's not going to be as much as we generally have on a normal release within the school report card. So without that data, we're really encouraging you to look at the information that you do have. There is a lot of specific student data in your district, in your schools, with diagnostic assessments. Many of your schools purchase MAP and STAR and other on-the-market products. You also have district designed and developed interim assessments that will provide information and data on your students. So we're really encouraging you to look at those pieces of data, your classroom data, your formative assessments that you have locally, and to maybe look at administering those at different time of year. Many of those assessments are designed to be given like later in the fall and in the winter months, and then again in the spring. You may consider utilizing those earlier when the students are back so that you can gauge their academic performance level. And then once you get those data pieces back, then to analyze those, interpret those results, and then use those for curricular decisions. So again, piece of guidance that is designed to help you think through where the students are academically as they return to school. So we hope that that is beneficial and helpful for you. And so again, we're just to address the possible gaps in students' learning due to the NTI. So good, thank you for moving that along. So Helen, what is the next slide? Okay, let's pause at this point and see if Pam has any questions.
We've had several questions come in, and we're going to start with Kevin's question for the alternate assessment. So let's begin with, is the AAAF for Career Ready no longer required?
So that is different than the AAAF for the alternate assessment accountability folder is different than the Career Ready assessment accountability folder. So the difference there being the AAAF versus the CRAF. The Career Ready assessment accountability folder ties to the employability skills attainment record and the career work experience certificates provided for students on the alternate assessment who may be looking for career ready as a component to our transition ready status. So they are not required this as far as the completing the ESAR or the CWEC. They are not required. They're an option for our students. But if you choose to provide the ESAR or the CWEC, you would have to complete the CRAF, the Career Ready Assessment Accountability Folder. So my announcement earlier was just about the AAAF, the Alternate Assessment Accountability Folder that ties to the attainment task of the Thar that we required. That's all it applied to.
That was a great answer, Kevin, because you also answered the next question about the CRAF and the ESAR folders as well.
Okay. Well,
that concludes our alternate assessment questions. Let's move on to our ACT questions. Shara, here's some of our ACT questions. Are the ACT training times, are those in Eastern or Central Time?
Pam, those are going to be, all three will be Eastern Standard Time.
Okay. And how will we know if students who transfer from other districts took the ACT in the 1920 school year? Will we have an opportunity to order materials for these students?
Well, for the transfer from one district to the other, we will know internally here at KDE. However, we are still working out OAA. We are still working out the details on that. And then they have an opportunity to place order order materials for these students. Yes, KDE and ACT is working to finalize a schedule of events that will be posted soon, and that'll give you guidance on makeup materials and such.
Okay. Also, the ACT trainings that you announced, will they need to attend all three of those or just one?
Well, we recommend all three trainings so that you can get the most up-to-date information around the test, KDE policy and the test administration and accommodation. So we encourage all three trainings.
And our last question for ACT, this is coming from someone that is wanting to prepare for all our situations. Do we have a plan in case we are not actually in school but doing remote learning, or if we are required to stay out of school come September?
Well, at this point, ACT and KDE are moving forward as if schools will be in session, but we are working on alternative plans for if schools are not in session or working remotely. So we will have more information around those details moving forward if we see that that is the case.
And we have another question that's popped in. How long are the trainings? Are they an hour, 2 hours? Do we have an idea?
I can speak for the KDE training. That will be about an hour. And I believe the ACT trainings are about an hour, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
And are the ACT trainings, are they live? Are they recorded? So that if we can't get there, can we see a recording of them later?
Yes, all three trainings will be recorded, and we will post them at a later, soon after the trainings occur, so that if you're unable to attend, that you'll be able to at least watch it. Because we realize some schools may not be in session in July 30th, so we want to be sure that everyone has the opportunity to see the trainings.
Thank you, Shara. That's all the questions we've had come in so far.
Okay.
So back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate those questions around the ACT training. There is going to be a very short turnaround of responsibilities for our test coordinators when we return. If we return to school, we realize that at this point, the return of students to school is unknown, and we want to be prepared for any situation. If the students are able to be in school, in-person sessions, and take the ACT administration, we want to be prepared to offer that opportunity to our students. If they're not, and we can't have an in-person administration in the fall, then we will come back with another opportunity for these 2019-2020 juniors. So the plan will be to move forward with those juniors if they're not able to take a fall administration, to then take the spring administration next March. So hopefully by next March, we will have a vaccine, we'll have testing across the board for COVID, and we will be able to have a administration of the ACT much like that we did this past March. So our plan is to provide this opportunity now for the juniors that did not get the opportunity, so that they can utilize that ACT administration for scholarship opportunities and applications to post-secondary institutions. So we want this opportunity in the fall so that they'll be able to utilize those scores in many different ways throughout their senior year. If that's not an opportunity for them in the fall for the statewide administration, then we'll revert to the spring administration. And as we have learned, many of our post-secondary institutions are waiving some testing requirements during this COVID time. And I want to say they're calling it a COVID or coronavirus admissions policy or something like that. So our students need to review and be familiar with the admissions process and requirements of the institutions that they are applying to during this COVID time, because it could be a bit different than it has previously. So at this point, I want to just reiterate some statements that our interim commissioner, Kevin Brown, made, because our nation is in a time right now that it's hurting. And I want to reiterate, our interim commissioner has said some really powerful statements, and many of us are shaken really over the senseless deaths. And I want to say their names. I want to say Ahmaud Arbery. I want to say George Floyd, who was laid to rest yesterday, and our own Breonna Taylor. We're seeing that there is an outcry of grief and anger in many different ways. And our families and our educators are gathering to speak out against racial injustice. And there's no place in our society for that type of behavior. And KDE is committed to its core values. And those core values are equity, achievement, collaboration, and integrity. And we stand as educators, as Kevin Brown said, against any and all acts of racism, disrespect, and inequitable treatments of persons and people of color. So we as educators, we must speak out against these injustices. So I want to just know that KDE and our office is committed to those core values, and we will continue our part to eliminate and reduce those injustices. Also, I want to share with you, you may have heard that a very precious person to many of us at KDE passed away yesterday. Teresa Perry, who works for Interim Commissioner Brown and has worked for many commissioners over the past several years and decades, passed yesterday. And I just want to remember her and ask you to remember her family and her two daughters and son, as well as her extended family at this time. So we have Teresa and her family in our thoughts, and know that we've lost someone that is dear and very precious person, very, very sweet, very a person who exemplifies those core values of KDE. So Teresa will be missed. We do invite you back next month at our regular scheduled time, the second Thursday of each month at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. We thank you. This month, the Kentucky Board of Education is meeting tomorrow and Friday, and we were bumped from our broadcast. Andy and Megan, who are so graciously host us every month during this time, were asked to be with the Kentucky Board of Education. So we thank them for rescheduling with us, and we thank you for joining us today during this day earlier. Until we see you again, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.